The October 1st meeting of the Thousand Oaks Council on Aging is now being called to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll now have the roll taken by Staff Liaison Francine Spriegel.
Please say here or present when I call your name. Commissioner Allen?
Present.
Commissioner Fotheringham?
Here.
Commissioner Gorbach? Here. Commissioner Hagee?
Here.
Commissioner Healy?
Here.
Commissioner Kopaz?
Here.
Commissioner Norkin?
Here.
Commissioner O'Connor?
Here.
And Commissioner Shentes?
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, item 4 on our agenda is public comments. There are speaker cards available at the back of the room for those wishing to address the Council on Aging regarding items on the agenda or on a subject regarding senior services in our city. Speakers are requested to state their name and city of residence for the record. I've received one speaker card from our friend Andrea Gallagher from Senior Concerns. So would you join us at the podium?
Thank you very much. My name is Andrea Gallagher, and I'm the president of Senior Concerns, and I live in the Thousand Oaks side of Westlake Village. And I have two things I'd like to talk about today. The first one is Boomer Boot Camp. And while you may be a boomer, or if you're a senior, it's appropriate for everybody. Whether you're talking about Elton John, Keith Richards, Eric Clapton, David Bowie, Ringo Starr, they're all over 65. And these folks have a lot to teach us about aging. One would think if you're Keith Richards and have led quite the life that you've led, that what could they possibly have to teach us about aging? But indeed, there's many life lessons along the way. This is a distinguished speaker series at the Civic Arts Plaza. It's Wednesday, October 22nd. And it's one night only. It is at 7:30 at the Share Forum Theater. Beforehand, we have a Boomer Expo from 6:30 to 7:30. Tickets are very reasonably priced, in part due to a grant that the City of Thousand Oaks has helped us with, and they're $30 a ticket. You can receive a ticket by calling Senior Concerns at 805-497-0189 or by logging on to www.seniorconcerns.org. We look forward to seeing everybody there. The second thing I'd like to announce is that we are having a memory screening day at Senior Concerns, which is at 401 Hodenkamp Road in Thousand Oaks, on Saturday, November 15th. And during Memory Screening Day, which runs from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., we have a series of presentations. This year we actually have a woman who wrote a book about her 18-year experience caring for her mother with Alzheimer's. In addition to that, we have Vicki Kind, who is a clinical bioethicist, who will be talking to us about how to help support folks who have cognitive impairment. And in addition to that, we have some physician educators that will be there. But during that time, most importantly, we have memory screenings. They're done in 15-minute intervals. They're free. They're performed by nurses. It takes literally less than 10 minutes. It's a 9-question test. You don't need to write anything down. And if you have any question at all about whether you think maybe you're leaving the keys behind the cushion of the couch is something that you need to worry about, please come on by. Memory Day is free at Senior Concerns, and again, it's November 15th, Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. And I assume that the memory screenings are non-invasive. Is that correct? Okay.
Just for you. Just yours.
Thank you. I'd now like to turn the meeting over to Vice Chair Healy.
Thank you, Chair Fotheringham. Item 5 on our agenda is the Commissioner Reports. Each one of the commissioners is charged with presenting information when appropriate on events or specific topics of interest to our seniors. Today we have item 5A, which is education, and the report on education will be given by Commissioner Gorbach. Wilson. Karen, thanks.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Healy. I am pleased to say that I'm going to be reporting on educational issues of interest to seniors this year, because we all know from extensive research studies that continuing to learn as long as we continue to breathe, helps promote healthy aging. The mental stimulation in which the synapses in our brains keep making connections when we learn something new may contribute toward maintaining memory health as we age, and certainly contributes toward a feeling of overall well-being. We are very fortunate in the Kaneho to have access to a wide variety of interesting classes and learning opportunities. At the Global Adult Community Center, for instance, through the Kaneho Valley Adult School, Moore Park College, California Lutheran University, the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute provided through Cal State Channel Islands, which also offers free lectures, which is also offering a free lecture series this fall on contemporary topics in media and entertainment. And of course, another learning opportunity is going to be available for you through the Boomer Boot Camp that Andrea just talked about. I recently attended a free, really interesting lecture on a Sunday afternoon at the Skirball Cultural Center in West Los Angeles with author Warren Hoffman, in which he examined how some of the Broadway plays we remember and love from the 50s and 60s dealt with issues of race. And he brought up things I never thought of in a million years. It's great going to even a 1-hour free lecture on a Sunday afternoon. You're learning something new, and it feels wonderful. So whether you want to learn in a classroom over the course of a semester or a quarter in a formal learning situation, whether you want to learn with a group of other folks, or if you prefer to learn on your own, by reading or listening to new books, or figuring out how to use your smartphone. The wonderful thing about learning is that there really is something for everyone at every age. And every moment you enjoy learning something new, you will be adding to the quality of your life. If there is an educational topic you would like to suggest that I research or discuss to present in future televised meetings, please contact me through the Council on Aging at www.toaks.org/seniors. www.toaks.org/seniors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Healy. Item 6 on our agenda is the Liaison Reports. In addition to being an advisory body to City Council, the Council on Aging also appoints commissioners to act as liaisons to various organizations. And I'd like to turn the program now over to Commissioner O'Connor to introduce our liaison.
Thank you very much. Today we are very privileged to have the director of the Kaneho Senior Volunteer Program, who will be giving us the report and tell us more about what he does and what they do for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Connor. First and foremost, I would just like to thank the council for your efforts, for your recommendation to the City Council on behalf of Kaneho Senior Volunteer Program. This was a just tremendous event, and the Kaneho Senior Volunteer Program will benefit greatly from your efforts. This contribution is going to greatly assist the program by reducing effort expended on fundraising, thereby allowing us to focus on the main goals of the program, which is the senior volunteer. So thank you very much for that. I would like to tell you about a couple of items. The preparation is currently underway for the annual Kaneho Senior Volunteer Program Recognition Luncheon. This is going to take place on Tuesday, December 2nd at the North Ranch Country Club. This event is specific to volunteers that have made an extraordinary contributions to the community through the CSVP 2013-14 program calendar year by working over 150 hours or by working in a particularly notable capacity. Invitations will be going out in the beginning of November, and we are expecting around 350 attendees to this event. Always an exciting event, and I know that so many of the volunteers really look forward to it. Another item that I am particularly excited about is the coordination for the 2015 Wellness Fest. The coordination is well underway, and things are looking good right now. There is a strong committee team working together in planning, sponsor recruitment, publicity, and other items. The date of this event will be January 21st, 2015 at the Global Adult Community Center. This event is a fundraising effort for CSVP, but it will also be a fun and informative event for the public. It will be free to attend. It will have free food, services, prizes, and entertainment, and information. Sponsorship opportunities are currently available. Please contact the Kaneho Senior Volunteer Program office at 805-381-2742 for more information. You may also visit the Kaneho Recreational Park District website on the Kaneho Senior Volunteer Program page. Thank you very much.
And we also have a presentation on the Global Center from Mike McAdam.
Good afternoon. Just wanted to give you a couple quick updates on some fun things coming up for the month of October at the Global Adult Community Center. First off, if anybody's been anywhere near the center in the last month, you've noticed a little bit of the parking lot zoo that we've had going on. We have successfully survived it. The parking lot's now open. Everything's back to normal. So thank you for your patience in helping us get through that. A couple of our big programs coming up is our community garage sale. We do this twice a year, and each individual parking stall in our parking spot becomes an individual garage sale. So we did this in April. We had 68 individual garage sales. Sale runs from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. You can come and shop all those garage sales in one spot instead of driving all over town to go to all those garage sales. Next event is brand new. It's called our Brats and Beers program. It's in the tradition of Oktoberfest. We're going to have brats, we're going to have beers, we're going to have some entertainment, we're going to have some games. Tickets are on sale. They're $5 for the meal. So come on down, sign up, stop by the front desk at Global Center. You can get those. Next one is our Global Amazing Race. Just like the TV show, we've got challenges and games and activities set up all in and around our center, the teen center, the library, the park behind the centers. So there's plenty of time to come sign up for that one. And our last one is our annual holiday craft bazaar. It's Saturday, November 1st. It's all handmade crafts. We have over 50 vendors signed up to provide those for us. And that's free to the public. It runs from 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. on Sunday the 1st. Or Saturday the 1st, excuse me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. What was the date on the Amazing Race again?
That is October 29th.
29th. All right, thank you.
That's October 12th. 24th.
All right. This is the time in our meeting where we have our guest speaker presentation. As a reminder, questions will not be taken during this portion of the meeting. It's not a public forum, but an informational presentation only. If you have questions for the speakers, please hold them till the end, and the speakers will stay after the meeting to answer them. This time, I would like to ask Commissioner Kopacz to introduce our guest speakers.
Thank you. Today we have with us 3 members of the Kaneho Senior Resource Network, that's CSRN, which is a branch of the Thousand Oaks Chamber of Commerce. They are here today to speak with us about the caregiver crisis that is growing each day and offer some information on what is being done and what can be done to assist the over 65 million people who are family caregivers. I would like to present our speakers today. Andre Gallagher, President of Senior Concerns. Robert Gutierrez, owner of Bright Star Care of Kaneho Valley. And Kalia, Heller, an elder care advisor and part owner of Assisted Living Connection. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Commissioners, for having us today. We really appreciate being here, and we appreciate being the first one up in the new season to talk about what is, we consider, a crisis that's occurring in our community, and we wanted to share what we're doing, so thank you. First, I'd like to just talk a little bit about Kaneho Senior Resource Network. So there are many chamber organizations, many subgroups within the chamber, and there were a number of senior service providers that decided to get together and rather than having a networking group, which we all belong to many of those, we determined that there were things that we could do to help support the community. And so as a result, the Kaneho Senior Resource Network are, as I mentioned, a set of professionals that are there to help seniors, their families, and family caregivers. And one of the things that we do is we promote and topics of interest within the community and give free presentations, and we're also there as resources within the community. So this is one of those presentations, and if anyone hears this out there today and would like us to present this at their workplace or at their other organization that they belong to, we'd be more than happy to do that. We're passionate about this topic, in part because every one of us that are in the senior services world has seen what's happening here. We're not sure the rest of the world has yet. So we're sort of like the Paul Revere who's saying the British are coming, the British are coming. We're saying the caregivers are coming, the caregivers are coming. And we're recognizing that, you know, a quantum change is going to happen. And so we're here to help address it. So let's take a minute and talk about caregiving in a community and why it's a community issue. It isn't just an individual or personal issue. First of all, just to sort of give you some context, over 50 years ago, the Older Americans Act was instituted, and that was instituted to start Medicare and a number of other programs to support seniors in their elder years. Of course, elder's not very much at 65 anymore. None of us would consider that old. But and so for 40 years, that program went sailing on by until about 10 years ago, those in power determined that family caregivers were critical and vital to the health of seniors. And so as part of the Older Americans Act, they supported helping family caregivers with emotional, physical, financial support. And the area agencies on aging have been providing a small amount of seed money to start supporting family caregivers in the county, for instance. And as a result of that, for instance, you'll see a picture right up there of the caregiver van that Senior Concerns has that we take to places of business, places of faith, community organizations to help educate and help family caregivers self-identify. Often family caregivers don't say, I'm a caregiver. They say, I'm a son or a spouse or a daughter. And so if you don't identify as a caregiver, you're certainly not going to get help. So our job is to go out there and help make that happen. And the caregiver van was in part funded by the Older Americans Act. So also cities are recognizing that there's things that need to be done. The Senior Adult Master Plan that Thousand Oaks and the Council on Aging fielded a number of years ago, and all the work that's been done since then, recognized the vital importance of family caregivers and have been addressing those needs in their subgroups. And then lastly, as we mentioned, the Chamber, our professionals, our senior service professionals in the Chamber have recognized that each of us have family stories of clients that we're working with on a daily basis where we recognize if only someone had known, if only someone had done something to support family caregivers, things could be different. So it is a community issue, whether you're talking government or healthcare or business professionals or nonprofits. There's lots of things that we can do as a community. So what I'd like to do now is turn the presentation over to Robert, who can share with you a little bit more about what we're going to cover today and a little bit about family caregivers.
Thank you, Andrea. Examples of things that have been done around the U.S., things that we believe we can strive towards. How would we become a community that cares? I'm very proud to be a part of CSRN, and I think we've got some positive momentum. But first, let's talk a bit more about the severity of the crisis. We heard earlier that nearly 66 million in the U.S. today report being a family caregiver for someone over 50. That trend is actually increasing. We've seen all the stats about the aging population. The fastest population segment in our community is 85 and higher, and that group is scheduled to quadruple over the next 30 years. So the numbers are staggering. The trend of family caregiving will likely grow by 85% by 2050. Family caregivers provide more than 80% of the long-term care services in the U.S. These are basic needs, like driving our elders to doctor's appointments, helping them with their medication, taking them to the grocery store, things that many of us take for granted. The value of these services that are happening in every city in our country is more than the total cost of Medicare. People don't realize that. It's shocking. In addition, today, things are more complicated. As the number of our seniors grow.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Should I continue? Sorry. Okay. So there's more happening in the home. So people are coming into the home from the hospital. They're coming from skilled nursing facilities. People are drawing blood. They're needing infusion therapy. So there's a greater need for services within the home. Let's talk about what's fueling some of that growth. We, as a population, are living longer. You can see over the last 100 years, our life expectancy has grown by over 30 years. In one of our assisted living communities here, we have, I believe, 6 residents that are over 100 years old. And that segment is going to continue to grow. The cost of healthcare in our community is staggering. If you compare the cost in the U.S. compared to Europe, for instance, the costs are 3 and 4 times the cost of care across the pond. Chronic disease, such as arthritis, diabetes, cancer, leading causes of death, is more prominent. 4 out of 5 people aged above 50 have at least one chronic disease. 1 in 4 have at least two chronic diseases. We are experiencing shorter hospital stays. Since about 1960, people are rotating throughout hospitals on a more frequent basis. And then there are cultural norms. There are some groups within our community where having in-home care or being a family caregiver is just second nature. I know in my family, my grandmother's 97. Her daughter has cared for her for the last 20 years. So having access to programs and services is very important, but understanding first what's available is a first step. Who are these caregivers? Before we can answer that question, we need to understand that caregiving is a lifespan issue. And this is really driven by life expectancy, as we have so many in our community that are over 85, closer to 100. We're seeing grandchildren caring for the grandparents in many cases. The caregivers predominantly female, 66%, with an average age of 48 years. But we're also seeing a growing number of male caregivers. This concept of the sandwich generation, those that are caring for both the aging parents and their own children, is real. Grandparents that are caring for grandchildren. Again, we have multi-generational communities, families that are trying to make ends meet. We have a lot of veterans that are coming back, some of whom have traumatic brain injury that need assistance. So this all adds to the complexity of the crisis that we feel needs to be addressed. Now I'm going to turn it over to Kalila for her to talk about her own experience.
Okay, I'm going to tell a story which is going to sound familiar to a lot of you, or aspects of it. And starts with a short phone call that changed my life. My mom's friend called, and I knew something was wrong. Mom was on her way to the hospital. I'm so grateful her friend had called her, and Mother's voice sounded so strange, she went over to check on her. And when I arrived at the hospital, I found out she'd had a massive stroke. So my mom was healthy, independent. She was just a mover and shaker at Leisure Village in Camarillo. And she had always insisted that I know where her advance directive was and all her paperwork, because she did not want her life extended by any extraordinary measures. My grandmother had Alzheimer's, or her mother had Alzheimer's, her sister had Alzheimer's, and my mom did not want to end up like they ended up, dying from that. But there in the emergency room, the neurosurgeon said my mom could fully recover if she had surgery now. So I was in shock, and I had 5 minutes to decide, do we do surgery now? My mom was only 76 years old. She was like a model of health for all her friends. So it was up to me. So this was my first entrance into being a caregiver, is making that ethical choice between life and death. Do I do surgery now, or do I follow her instructions and do nothing, and she would probably die? So I chose surgery. And, I look and I say, was that the correct choice? I think it was the easier choice to choose surgery at that time. And the good news is my mom went on to regain most of her independence, but the lasting effects from the stroke were vascular dementia. And that looks a lot like Alzheimer's, with short-term memory loss and diminishing cognitive capability. So I felt like Alice going down the rabbit hole, just tumbling into this world of caregiving. I mean, I prepare for things and I research things, and this just hit me. So all of a sudden, it's all of those, the long surgery, the hospitalization, nursing care in the skilled nursing facility, and then all driving Mom to doctor's appointments and physical and occupational therapy, living at home with her, hiring caregivers to come help. And it went on for many months, as it does after a major surgery, where she needed help with everything. So, as Robert was talking, when you're a caregiver, you're doing everything, bathing, dressing, grocery shopping, all those daily activities of life. My mom recovered sufficiently to still live on her own. She even started driving again after a year. But there were the lasting scars of the vascular dementia. And so I ended up becoming the bad guy. I had a sister who also lived far away and would come down to help. She was the good guy because she would come and visit. I was the bad guy because I lived here, and I had to take away Mom's car keys, which is just such a hallmark of independence. I was also the bad guy when I stopped her shopping on TV and took away her credit cards because she sent $3,000 to a scammer who insisted he was bringing her the winning check from Publishers Clearinghouse. 3 years later, my mom decided to explore assisted living. And she chose a community in Northern California near my sister where she could save $1,000 a month. And for me, as caregiver, there was a piece of it. I was relieved she was going to be in assisted living where someone else would be watching over her, but also just the relief of the responsibility. So now my sister was the primary caregiver, driving her to doctor's appointments and managing medications and having to say no. So now she was the bad guy. And I was the good guy who lived 400 miles away. But I was still, and I am still, a caregiver. Even though I'm at a distance, I'm counseling my mom and sister on the phone several times a week. My mom, who's illogical how she does things. My sister, who's impatient. And managing Mom's finances. So there's this toll, this tremendous toll that caregiving takes on the caregiver. And, what happens when you can't afford assisted living? I feel so grateful that my mother had saved the money that she could actually go move to an assisted living community. Or you can't afford the 24-hour live-in care. Or the family can't even afford 4-hour respite care a week. So, just what's the toll, whether it's a 2-month journey with caregiving or 2 years or 10 years? I've been doing this for 8 years, and, when I look to see will it last another 8 years, I have some mixed feelings about that, truthfully. And a lot because of my mom's struggle with cognitive decline and and depression. There's a bright silver lining in the story in that where she moved, she met a man and fell in love, and they're sharing an apartment now in the senior living complex. So, and one of the places I reached out for help with this caregiving journey was I knew Tammy Podell from my networking group, who has a senior referral agency, and now I'm actually working with her in this agency. So it propelled me into my next career. But being a caregiver when Mom was living here, visiting her daily, and then it backed off to several times a week, I would come home completely wiped out. And so I saw it affect my marriage. My husband would say, "You've got to limit your time. This is just, you've got to do something else." And, but I was like, well, I can do it. I can handle it all. And what happens with caregivers when there's no one else to take on responsibility? I had a sister who would come down and help, or I had the mom who had the finances to bring a caregiver in. What happens when there's no one to take on any financial responsibility? So those tolls in caregiving, you get your physical health. Who's going to take care of the caregiver? Is there time to go to the groceries, to go shopping at the mall? I mean, that was like totally out of the picture. Or to go and take a walk somewhere or exercise. Family caregivers have a much higher incidence due to the stress of smoking and depression, drug abuse. And there's, like I mentioned, my marriage. It takes a toll on marriage and interpersonal relationships. Do you have time to go out to be with friends anymore? Andrew's going to talk about employment. I didn't work for several months when I was at the height of the crisis with taking care of my mom. So you want to look, now that I'm in the senior industry, I know about all these resources, but there's all these barriers to caregiver support that people experience. And one of those major ones is they don't even identify themselves as a caregiver. I certainly didn't. I mean, here I am taking care of my mom, going to her house, back and forth. I wasn't attending things like this. It was just, I'm the daughter, and Mom raised me and took care of me, so this is what I do. This is my job, and this is, my responsibility. And so many people are either the daughter or the son or the wife or the husband. It's just what they do. They don't really necessarily see themselves as caregivers. And also, or friends. Isn't that what friends do, is take care of you when you have a crisis like this? And are there resources? What if there's no financial resources to reach out or to help? Especially when you're having to pay, you might have to pay for the extra care to come into the house if Mom doesn't have the resources. And again, health really suffers. They're overworked caregivers. They're taking care of loved ones often without the extra training or support, and they may not seek any kind of assistance for depression or weight gain or alcohol abuse. And a final area is people are afraid also of having anybody come into their house to take care of their loved ones. So this is just a little vignette of my personal story and my continuing to learn. And I'm going to turn that over now to Andrea, who's going to talk about what happens with the workplace and caregivers.
Yeah. Thank you, Kalila. It's a pretty amazing story. And, what I find is that in almost everyone I talk to these days, they're sharing a caregiving story with me. The one thing, because I know there's a lot of seniors out there listening to this television program today, the one thing that I do want to say, and I'm sure Kalila would answer this question this way, is that family caregivers are honored, generally speaking, to do what they do. That seniors shouldn't feel like they are a burden to their family. Yes, there's a lot of challenges and a lot of stress, but at the end of the day, it's something that we are honored to do. You took care of us as children, or even if you're caring for a neighbor or a friend. So I just want to make sure that seniors in the audience who are getting support and help from their kids or their friends or whatever don't feel that they're necessarily being a burden. This is what is called interdependence, and there's still things that you can do for the folks that are caring for you. So I just want to make that comment because I don't want seniors on the television to think gee whiz, I'm in need of all this care and there's nothing I can contribute, which in many ways seniors are contributing to our lives, even if they are getting some support and help from their families. So let's take a turn here and talk a little bit about caregiving for a minute and how it affects the workplace. On the left, this is a little bit of a busy chart, but I'm going to try to take a few moments and explain it. Often what we hear when those of us in the Kaneho Senior Resource Network, even when I work at Senior Concerns, and I go to a business and I'm talking to them about the impact of family caregiving, they say, oh, I understand. Let me connect you with our head of HR or one of our benefits people or one of our employee assistance people. And indeed, what I don't think is getting through to businesses in the community is that this is not, caregiving and the impact of it is not just an HR issue. And let me see if I can do a little bit to explain that. First of all, family caregiving absolutely affects productivity in the workplace. I cannot tell you how many adult children that we deal with at Senior Concerns who are, jumping out of meetings to take a loved one to the doctors or to fill medications or to, research places where mom or dad is going to go live. Self-professed family caregivers say they're lower in productivity than their counterparts. Often they have presenteeism. I'm in my chair, but I'm not there. I'm on the phone with others, or I'm on the internet, or my mind is in a different place. They have more frequent absenteeism. They have decreased retention, meaning that often family caregivers have to leave the workplace, take a sabbatical, take a period of time off, in order to care for a loved one. So, and they're also not standing up for those promotions and things, in part because they recognize I can't add any more burden to my life. My work-life balance is out of control right now. So there's a productivity piece. So if you look at that bottom left little oval egg there, work and productivity is affected as an employer. Also, health promotion is affected. So let's talk a little bit about some of the stuff on the right-hand column there. The most frequently reported disease that a family caregiver is caring for a loved one for is Alzheimer's. And if any of you have ever cared for a loved one with cognitive impairment, you know what a challenge that can be. The fifth most common reported condition is stroke. More caregivers, between 35 and 50% of caregivers are likely to experience chronic pain. My neck hurts, my back hurts, my shoulders hurt, my jaw hurts. They're twice as likely to have diabetes as non-caregivers. They're more likely to be smokers than non-caregivers. They have a higher risk for depression, and they're 3 times more likely to have heart disease. So we look at the toll family caregiving can take, and as a company, if you were to own a business and you knew you had a large population of family caregivers, you would know you had a pretty unhealthy population. And lastly, most employers these days are subsidizing some of the cost of health care for their employees, and with more incidence of more medical conditions, there's a higher payer cost. So when we talk to employers, what we need to let them know is this is not just an HR issue. This is a CEO issue. This is not just an HR issue. And we bless the HR people because, generally speaking, they're the ones that get us into a business to talk about this issue and to help connect with family caregivers. But it's a bigger issue than that. But it's more than just a workplace issue, and this is why we're going to talk about it being a community issue today. First of all, there's an economic impact. Kalila said, I wasn't out shopping. I didn't go to the mall. I didn't go to the movies. I didn't go out for a walk. I didn't enjoy my park. I didn't go to the Global Senior Center. I'm not volunteering. I might not even be in the area because I spend every weekend driving an hour and a half to go take care of my loved one who doesn't live in the community with me. So there is a financial impact to the community. There's a social impact. Caregiver stress often results in abuse of an elder. We see this all too often, whether it's physical abuse or emotional abuse. I know of cases where there is just such stress from family caregiving that as loving as the family caregiver wants to be, they end up yelling at the senior. Sometimes there's financial abuse. Well, if I'm going grocery shopping for mom, I'll just pick up a few items for myself and pay for it out of mom's pocketbook. That's financial abuse. Sometimes there's neglect. You know, I don't know if I can go over and see dad this weekend. He's just going to have to fend for himself. And sometimes abandonment. So there are many social issues that can come out of family caregiving. Community-based care. Right now, home and community-based services depend on family caregiving. Whether you are a in-home care agency or others, family caregivers are the vital blood that help make all of that happen. And then healthcare. Caregivers' needs for services are much greater, whether you're talking about alcoholism or drug abuse or depression or the greater incidence of hospitalizations. It's affecting our healthcare system. So whether you're talking about business or city government or nonprofits or for-profit entities, it's affecting everyone. And this is just becoming a huge issue because of the issues Robert raised earlier. So, can a community address this? I mean, really, you know, should it just be the Senior Concerns of the World or the Council on Aging or the, you know, Area Agency on Aging? Or should we dress it as a Thousand Oaks community? So let's talk about that for a minute. And what I'd like to liken it to is the obesity epidemic that's happening in New York City and how they've addressed it as a community. So right now, the food policy coordinator is making sure in New York City that on fast food restaurants, there are calorie counts on every item on the menu. They've reduced the size of sugary drinks. For instance, you can't sell a big gulp in New York City anymore, for example. Public health. They now have health bucks that people can use to buy fresh fruits and vegetables. On the left-hand side, you'll see a green cart. Those are replacing some of the hot dog carts in New York City, and they sell fresh produce. The Department of Education has changed the meal program within the schools. They've changed the vending machine standards. They have a Move to Improve program. So, for instance, even if you're in a math or a science class, the kids have to get up and move around during class. And even Coca-Cola is into the fray, talking about all calories count. So whether you're drinking a sugary drink or reduced calorie drink or bottled water, anything that you're drinking still has calories, generally speaking, unless it's water, associated with it. So here's an example of an entire community that is addressing a problem that they see as an issue. So what can we do as a community? Well, there is a one-book program, One Book, One Community, with the library where city residents read a book, and then there's a forum to discuss it, and often the author is invited. And for instance, there's a great book out there called The Land of Limbo, Fiction and Poetry About Family Caregiving. And wouldn't that be a great book for the community to read? Because it not only affects the adult children that are caring for an aging loved one, but the kids, the grandkids, everybody. What could healthcare potentially do? Well, wouldn't it be great if you were a family caregiver and whether your loved one was in the UCLA or Los Robles or Kaiser system, if there was an app that you had on your phone that you could help, that would navigate you through the healthcare system as a family caregiver. What can you do as an employer? Between 1999 and 2008, there was a 400% increase in family responsibility discrimination lawsuits. The way to think about this is family caregivers were caring for loved ones and they were being discriminated. Either they weren't getting promoted or they were being discriminated in some way because they needed to take time off to be with a loved one. And so we've seen a huge increase. So just even educating managers about what family caregiving is, what they have, what rights they have within the workplace would be a great place to start. And then could nonprofits do something different? One of the things that they do in Ventura that we might want to think about here is a volunteer network of caregivers that helps elders. So there's lots of things we can do as a community. What I'd like to do now is turn it over to Robert, who's going to talk a little bit about what caregivers want and need.
Thank you, Andrea. So what do caregivers deem as important? How can we support them? When we talk about in the workplace, obviously flexibility is key. As Kalila mentioned, the life experience of these circumstances can turn our lives upside down. One of the things that we work on in CSRN is having one point of contact, and the reference here being one phone number to call for a variety of service offerings. We need to demystify some of these programs like Medicare and Social Security, not only for our seniors, but for the children supporting them. And the balance between life and work has to be more equal. Again, as Kalila mentioned, there's a real impact to the caregiver caring for a loved one that oftentimes hits the workplace. So support is very important. Respite is very important. Just having time to disconnect and focus on one's health is critical. Care can come in many forms, but having an affordable solution is also very important. So these are some things that we feel are important for the family caregiver. So where does it start? Well, first, we feel engaging the family caregiver is critical. Things like this, which we're very grateful to be a part of. We need to build awareness through programs and educational materials. We need to help caregivers identify and destigmatize the word caregiver so that people identify themselves as being valued and not just someone who's helping mom or dad take the daily shower. Education is key. Too oftentimes our parents feel like a burden. And so working through those issues, not only with the parent, but also the family caregiver is very important. There are real detriments emotionally, physically, financially to being a caregiver. And oftentimes because they get thrust into this situation, they don't have line of sight to any of their concerns. This is certainly something that we're working on through CSRN and Senior Concerns. Building a support system is critical, and helping families at all ages plan for what most of us will confront in our later years is key. Having a long-term care plan, I can't think of anything that's more important for our families today, and we feel like through these efforts we can build on some good momentum. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Andrea. Oh.
So one way that we are planning to build awareness of family caregiving and engage our caregivers is we've got an event happening on Saturday, January 31st in 2015. This is a half-day program and luncheon entitled Canelo Cares, and it's designed to recognize, honor, and celebrate our family caregivers who are caring for aging loved ones. The event's being hosted by Senior Concerns, the Greater Kaneho Valley Chamber of Commerce, and the mayors of Westlake Village, Agoura, and Thousand Oaks, as well as UCLA, Kaiser, and Los Robles Hospital. And we're going to have a half day of a chance for caregivers to share their stories, renew their spirit, relieve their stress, and have uplifting and empowering program that they get to attend, and will provide respite care for their loved ones so they can actually come and be there and laugh. The event will be held from 10 to 1:30 at Los Robles Greens Golf Course, which is south of the 101 on Moore Park in Thousand Oaks. And again, our purpose is to gather together our caregiver community, help people identify as caregivers, and feel like they're being supported and educated and assisted. So if you know of a family caregiver, now is the time to ask them to mark their calendars. Saturday, January 31st, 2015. And it'll be a day of inspiration and laughter and community. And so thank you very much for joining us today. And again, we'll be able to answer questions after the program.
Make a comment.
Yes.
Okay. It's not. I just want to thank you guys so much for what you brought to us. About 10 years ago, my husband was very, very ill, and I was a caregiver, and I was 60, which at the time seemed old, but now it doesn't. But I remember so well, and I guess maybe I was just young enough not to have any friends that were in this particular spot. I had no idea. I mean, I was lost. My kids were great. and my husband had a psychiatrist out here that he had to see for medication. And every day I'd have to, once a week, I'd have to leave my job and see me, come home, take him, go back to work most times. And I remember every time this psychiatrist would say to me, "Are you sure you're okay?" And every time I said, "Oh, I'm great." And so finally she said to me, "I'm more concerned if you are really great than if you're really just telling me you're great." And she said, "I truly think you need to see someone." And I did. I started talking to her. And it's the biggest thing in the world just to have to ask somebody, if you're a caregiver, just like you said, ask for help. Go to these things. It's amazing, because otherwise you feel so lost, and there is a lot of anger and all those things, and guilt over anger. So if I had had anything like this, it would have just been such a godsend at that time. So thank you guys for bringing this to the community. So thank you.
Karen?
Thank you. That was really appreciate it. I was Andrea, as you were talking about the issue of understanding caregivers as being larger than HR and as belonging to an entire business, an entire organization. That is so true, and it's true not only for workers who are caregivers for the elderly, but it's true for parents and young children. And I was thinking back to a time I live in Thousand Oaks and was working in Simi Valley, and I got the phone call from a neighbor that my babysitter had put my infant child into a stroller and into the back of a pickup truck and went off with her boyfriend. And my neighbor was watching this in horror out of her living room window and said, "You might want to get over here." So I remember like it was yesterday, and that little girl is 26 years old now, but I remember like yesterday that I ran hysterically and made it from Simi Valley to my home in Thousand Oaks in 10 minutes. So I think the issue is large, and it's an issue of businesses attending to the needs of families at all stages of life, and having policies in place that allow people to honor their families at all stages of life. And it's a community issue, and I think businesses can lead the way with family-friendly policies, because what's good, of course, as you beautifully, what's good for workers, what's good for business is what's good for a community and makes a healthy community. So thank you for your presentation.
Ron?
Two questions have been brought up by you folks, and they're questions that I've had people ask me, and I don't know that there's an answer or if there's something working on it. The first one was, what's available to caregivers? Somebody raised that question. And the other one was one phone number to call. I think those are two really critical issues, and I know people ask me all the time. I say, well, I'll try to find out. Is there a book or something that we can get that tells us and lists everything that's available to us as caregivers? Does this exist? Is this something in progress? Is it something we need to address?
It's a great question, and actually there are a few one numbers to call, interestingly enough. Actually in our county we have a 211 number, which is one way for folks to access services in the community, nonprofit services that could help, social services. Another is Kaneho Senior Resource Network. So that would be a lot of business professionals who would be there and would help you to navigate the system. And a third is Senior Concerns, with our senior advocates, with our case managers that help family caregivers, pro bono legal and financial services, adult daycare, Meals on Wheels. We often are the first point of contact for family caregivers, and a nonprofit in the community who can help. So that's one of the first few lines of defense, as I might suggest.
And there, we have a number of support groups for family caregivers run through Senior Concerns and run through a number of different agencies. You can see on Senior Concerns website a listing of those support groups.
Yes, Karen?
And I would also suggest the Kaneho Connections online resource list. I don't remember. There's a page for seniors and all types of services that are of interest to seniors. Is there a section, do we remember, Francine, specifically for caregivers on that page? No. Okay. But a list of a variety of services that are of interest to seniors, and that is through the Kaneho Connections online website that you can find again through to.org/seniors. Thank you.
So one of your questions was one number to call, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the other question.
One resource, like, for example, a book that a senior or a caregiver could get that lists all of these resources in it. One source, not 3 or 4, and some of them don't have computers or don't know how to use them.
Right.
But if they could go to the Global Center or one of those places they're familiar with and pick up a book that listed all these resources,
Right.
I think that would be something to think about.
Yeah, often what we find at Senior Concerns is that every individual's path is very different, and what you don't know is what you don't know. So often what it takes is having a conversation with a trusted professional that could help navigate you down a particular path. A book is great. It's only as good as knowing that that's the resource that offers CalFresh, or that's the resource that can do your veterans benefit form, or that's the resource where you could get pro bono financial resources. So it would be great if we all had a book, and there's been lots of folks that have really tried to make a book or an online set of complete resources. But there are any of those 3 numbers I just gave you, whether it be Senior Concerns or Kaneho Senior Resource Network or 211 or Kaneho Connections, would be a great place to start. But having a conversation with a professional is a great idea.
Yes,
One of the things that we, Rick brought up, the Wellness Fest 2015 that we're going to have, and that is going to be a lot of local business people, nonprofits, even down to Shelter Hope Pet Place, all sorts of things for wellness. So people will have representatives there, and the thing that we are going to put together and are putting together, which is really amazing, is going to be a resource guide. And it is the most beautiful resource guide I've really ever seen. I mean, we have a printer that's doing it for us. It should be really nice, and it will be broken down by page, so by section. So all you have to do is put that January 21st date on your calendar, and you get to have a resource directory to keep forever. And call Rick Tanaka if you're interested you can get it by calling the Global Center, or you can see me. And actually, if one of the things I think Council on Aging tries to do, if somebody comes up to me, I won't know the answer to that question probably, but a lot of times we know who to call. We know to call Senior Concerns or one of the senior advocates. So, don't hesitate to ask people that you know that are involved in the senior community. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes.
Just one concern for me is that, having gone through this myself, is to not forget the youth, because sometimes you're very young. Mm-hmm. I had older parents, and so I was going for my master's in nursing at 27, and I had to delay a whole quarter of my education at UCSF and come down and take care of my mother and a lady that was like my grandmother. And then 11 years later, before any of my friends had to do anything with their parents, I was taking care of a 92-year-old father. So it's never too young to start educating people on caregiving and the issues that are involved there. And so I don't know if it's taught in schools or anything like that. I knew about it because of my nursing background.
Right.
Okay, I've got a couple of comments. I've sometimes described myself as a caregiver to the caregiver. My wife is a caregiver for her mother, and I'm her caregiver in a sense. One of my roles as a caregiver to the caregiver is that I'm the one who gets the training. So whenever somebody holds a class on how to be a caregiver, she doesn't want to attend. She doesn't have time to attend. She doesn't want to, when she's off duty, in a sense, she doesn't want to think about it. And so I think many of the family caregivers probably don't get out to training events and so forth, and it might be helpful if we found a way to sort of take training to them. If somebody could go into the home with them while they're doing the caregiving and sort of observe them, work with them for a couple of hours or so, and make suggestions on how they might make the whole process less painful. I've also found it sort of difficult to get across the notion that you should put your own oxygen mask on first and so forth. This is a good theory, but it doesn't seem to work always in practice. Caregiving, I think, is, at least family caregiving, is often an isolating process that, and I think as Kyla had mentioned in her own experience and so forth, you tend to sort of pull away from friends and so forth, and you don't have time for it. You're under so much stress and so forth. So it's difficult in that respect, and my Alzheimer's or dementia's kicking in now, so I had one more comment, but I'll maybe it'll come to me later. Talk to you later. Yeah, senior moment.
If I might,
Take care of you.
Thank you.
if I could underscore one of the things you're saying for a moment, one of the things we find, whether it's Senior Concerns or CSRN, or many of the presentations that are made in the community, what ends up happening is we see more senior service providers in the audience than we do family caregivers, in part because of what you're talking about, but in part because somehow we're not reaching them. So one of our goals, and this is why we're so early with this program, and by the way, this is the day before the Super Bowl, so it's an easy way to remember it. It is the day before the Super Bowl. We're going to call it Super Caregiver Day. And the intent is all of us between now and that period of time are going to be meeting up with family caregivers, and we need you to take their hand, hold their hand, and say to them, I have a place you need to be. You have a few months to plan for it. There's free respite care available. It will cost you nothing. It's a non-work day, hopefully for most people on a Saturday. That's why we're out here really early, because we're hoping, just to your point, that there are many of us in the room and those of us on the television who can make sure that we're touching family caregivers so we can get the right people in the seats at this event.
Thank you. Also, I remembered my last comment, and I think that many family caregivers have an agenda that's sort of beyond the survival of the person they're taking care of and so forth. So you're taking care of somebody you've lived with for a long time, you love, and it wouldn't be uncommon to say, well, if my loved one who's bedridden and so forth had always wanted to go skydiving and so forth, it's sort of up to me to figure out how to make that happen. And so it may not seem logical to those on the outside, but to that person, it's a very logical thing to strive for. And so I think family caregivers get caught in this sort of bind where they're not just trying to keep somebody else alive; they're trying to make it possible for them to be everything they could be, in a sense. So,
yeah.
Any other comments, questions? Yes, Donna.
I just wanted to say thank you for that wonderful presentation, and also for doing your Kaneho Senior Resource Network. I know it takes a lot of you extra hours, and so that you had the heart for the caregivers. But I do have one question, and I just wondered, what about as Thousand Oaks and the baby boomers and increasing the population of our aging population, what about the professional caregivers? Is there anything you can say about that for our Thousand Oaks area?
Since you're a leader of one of those organizations.
So I understand your comment. Are you wondering, how do we support the professional caregiver?
No, I'm wondering, as more of our population becomes aged.
Okay.
Yeah, how is there a vision for increasing the professional caregivers?
Well, certainly from a nursing standpoint, that's a big dilemma. Many of the nurses today, LVNs, RNs, specifically RNs, are starting to retire, and there's not enough nurses coming through. I know as a provider of in-home care, we are constantly trying to find CNAs and home health aides and caregivers, there's not enough. And so I think back to Loretta's comment was an excellent one. I know of a couple of programs in the county that have programs in high school that stress caregiving as and nursing as a career, not just a vocation, but as a career. So I think there are some things that we can learn from that are being done, but certainly there aren't enough resources, especially in this community.
I might also say at Senior Concerns, we refer a lot of folks to in-home care agencies that have paid caregivers that are supporting folks in the home. And I'm in awe of the education that is now being developed for these in-home caregivers. How to properly transfer a person, how to manage dementia behaviors, how to provide a nutritious meal for someone that meets the needs of that individual, medication management, and just kinds of things that could be helped. And so I'm seeing agencies coming to using education and coming to a new level of care for folks, and I think that will continue. I think what we'll see is family paid caregivers will be getting more and more experience in education, and it will become, I mean, I know when I cared for our elderly neighbors, our aging neighbors, and cared for them until their passing, that I learned more from the paid family caregiver than I ever knew in a million years. And so often they're the ones that are teaching families how to transfer and how to do the things that a family caregiver needs to do. So their education is really important. And I think there's a lot of agencies out there that are doing that today.
Andrea? I have one comment to make on, yep, there, better? Thank you. One comment on your support group for caregivers. I really support that so much because many of the people that I speak to that are caregivers, they feel ashamed or guilty, and there's a kind of an unspoken code of silence that we don't go outside the family and talk about what's going on in the home. And I always encourage them to go to the support groups because there they can find that they're not alone. So I applaud that. Keep it up.
That's also why respite care is so important, just to give family caregivers a break so they can get out of the cycle and be able to, recharge their battery. So.
Okay, other questions or comments? Not. I'd like to thank the panelists again for a tremendous program. It's
Thank you.
a program that we need to talk about frequently. Thank you again. The next item on our agenda are commissioner comments, and these are just informational tidbits and so forth that we as commissioners and so forth would like to pass around along and share. They may be of a personal nature or maybe not. Does anybody have a commissioner comment? Loretta.
Yes, I just wanted to remind seniors that are thinking about getting a flu shot that this is the flu shot season, so please go and check with your healthcare provider and get your flu shots early.
Okay. Got a couple of announcements, one of which is that I think everybody listening to me is aware that this is the 50th anniversary of the city of Thousand Oaks and so forth. What you may not be aware of is that 2014 is the 40th anniversary of the Council on Aging. So we're celebrating a birthday of sorts as well and so forth. The second is that councils on aging around the country come in a great many forms, some of which are, as ours and so forth, sort of an arm of city government. Some are organized at the county level, some are independent 503C or C3 organizations, and so on. But at the county level, we have the Ventura County Area Agency on Aging and so forth as our counterpart, and those are much more similar in their organization and function and so forth, and as a result there tend to be statewide and national organizations, associations of those organizations. And so there is a National Association of Area Agencies on Aging that each year reviews the programs put on by the local, more county-level organizations and offers them awards for ones that they think are worthy of it. There are currently 618 local area agencies on aging, and 13 of those programs within those 618 AAAs have been acknowledged this year for awards. 2 of those 13 awards went to the Ventura County Area Agency on Aging. So our local organization is doing very well compared to its peers at a national level. So congratulations to VCAAA.
Karen's first. I just wanted to mention, Francine gave me a note, and I was just going to do this. The first thing I thought of this morning, and I don't know how many of you guys will remember our Commissioner Leonard Loomis, who served with us for, with me personally for 5 years. And every time, what I thought of this morning was every time Francine would call the roll, the rest of us would always say, like, prisoner here, and he would say something that was different. You know, that was my first thought when I woke up this morning. So he passed away this summer, and it's strange for me. And he will be very missed in the community and here on the Council on Aging. So we miss you, Leonard.
Yes, Karen.
Thank you very much. Just a quick reminder, we're holding this meeting on October 1st. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. For all the women out there in the audience and in television land and the men who love them, make an appointment with your doctor to discuss early detection, because that saves lives. Okay? Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other comments? If not, we're ready to adjourn.
Thank you.